Well, good morning. It's good to see all of you this morning. I'm glad that you are here and in church. This is my favorite day of the week. I love being able to get together and gather on Sunday mornings, and I'm so grateful for this church. I'm so grateful for each of you, and I'm just thankful for what God is doing, and I'm excited and I'm expectant for what God is doing and what He's going to continue to do here in this church and in our community. And you might be wondering, what is this big table doing up here? We'll get to that a little bit later, so we'll keep you on the edge of your seat here. But I don't know if I already said it. If I have not had a chance to meet you, my name is Isaac, and I'm one of the pastors here at Bridge Church. Now, as we jump in, I need to know who I'm talking to. So how many of you have seen the movie Cars? A lot. Has anybody in here not seen the movie Cars? You can raise your hand. Okay, a couple of you. So you have some homework today after church. You can go home and you will watch the movie Cars. It's a good movie. Now, I have my wife and I, we have our oldest daughter is 2. And somehow, some way, Cars has become like her favorite movie. She's got a Lightning McQueen little like toy car. She's got a Sally toy car. She loves cars. Now, she's kind of started to gravitate more towards Toy Story a little bit, but she loves cars, and because of that, I have seen my fair share of Cars, probably more than I would like to admit. I've seen 1, 2, and 3, and I've seen all of them more than once, probably more than twice, maybe even more than 3 times. But in the first one, and if you haven't seen it, I'm sorry, I'm going to spoil the movie a little bit. But there's, again, this guy named Lightning McQueen. Now, Lightning McQueen is a rookie, and he's trying to win the Piston Cup. That's all he can think about. That's all he cares about is winning the Piston Cup. He's such a head case. He's so full of himself that he's got no room for a spare tire. There's nothing. He's just so full of himself. And what happens, they have this race. There's a 3-way tie, so now they have to go and they have to schedule another race to see who the Piston Cup winner is. It's in California, so they drive, and while they're driving to California, somehow the trailer gets bumped open. Lightning somehow slides out of the back of the trailer, and he's in the middle of the interstate. He doesn't know where he is. He starts driving around, and he finds himself in Radiator Springs. And he does a little bit of damage while he's entering into the town, if you've seen the movie. And he has to stay there, okay? And this whole time, he's thinking about how he has to win the Piston Cup. He's got to get out of Radiator Springs because he has to go and win the Piston Cup. Now, as time goes on, he's finally able to get out of Radiator Springs. He repairs the road. He builds some friendships and relationships, and he gets to the race. And he's going. He doesn't start off very well, but then his friends come and they join him at the race, and he starts to do better. And now he's in this position to finally win the Piston Cup. This moment that he had been waiting for his entire racing career is in front of him. He's about to cross the finish line to win the Piston Cup when out of the corner of his eye, he sees one of the other race cars flying through the air and landing, crashing in the infield of the racetrack. And so here Lightning is, he's in first place, he's about to cross the finish line, and what does he do? He stops. 5 feet before the finish line, Lightning stops. This guy who had all he could think about was winning the Piston Cup, but here he is putting the brakes on, and Chick Hicks goes flying past him. It's like, Lightning, what are you doing? You finally had this moment, this chance, this opportunity to get this thing that you had wanted so badly, and now you stop. And what happens is he goes and he backs up and he drives over to Mr. the King, and he pushes the King across the finish line. And the King asks him, "Hey, Lightning, what are you doing?" And Lightning says, "I think that the King should finish his last race." Now we look at this and we're like, again, Lightning, what are you doing? This thing that you've always wanted, you've let it go. And what we see, what happened in this moment is that Lightning, he had spent some time in Radiator Springs, and in this moment we see that Radiator Springs had rubbed off on Lightning McQueen. He realized and learned that there was more to racing than just winning, right? And I say this to highlight the fact, we all know this, but that the people that we spend time with, the people that we are around, the things that we give our time to matter. It rubs off on us. And in this moment, Lightning's attitude changed. His perspective shifted because of the people that he had been around, right? Because who or what we spend time with will impact our lives and rub off on us in some way or another. Now, the problem, if we think about this in our own lives, the problem is that for most of us, if we're honest and if we really think about it, we're really unaware of who or what we're becoming like. We're not really aware of how the people that are around us are affecting us. We're not aware of the things that we're giving our time to and how it might be impacting us. And maybe for some of us, we're like, I want to be more like Jesus, but we have this unawareness and then our lives are not aligned in order for that to happen. And I would ask, and this is what we're going to talk about this morning, but what if part of the problem with this is that we're misplacing our worship? What if the problem with this, we're frustrated because we want to be more like Jesus, but we don't feel like we're becoming more like Jesus? What if the problem is that we're misplacing our worship? Now, you might be wondering, okay, Isaac, what are you talking about, right? And we're going to get to this in just a moment. But if I were to ask you how you would define worship, and this is, we've got to get this right before we continue in this message. If I were to ask how you would define worship, I think some of the answers would be maybe singing, or playing an instrument, or maybe we think back to maybe movies or things that we've seen or people that we've heard about way back who used to like bow down to things, and obviously that's still an expression of worship today. And these are the things that would come to our mind when we think about what worship is. Now, none of these are necessarily wrong, but what these are is not definitions of worship, they're expressions of worship. Okay, and so what we need to understand is that to worship is to pay homage to, or to literally ascribe worth to some person or something. So in other words, to worship is to attribute value to something. Okay, to worship is to attribute value to something. Now, if we think about this and we understand worship as attributing value to something, we can all realize, we can all understand that, hey, all of us worship. All of us worship someone or something. And this is why when we talk about this is why coming to church on Sunday mornings is so important and so valuable, because by participating in the act of worship, we're not just singing songs, we're saying, God, you're valuable to me. We're saying, God, I want to worship you, and God, you're worthy to be praised. And so we're going to get to that a little bit more later. But really, we do this everywhere, right? We attribute value to things everywhere we go. We do it at work. We do it at home, we do it at school, we do it at church. We do it everywhere we go. See, worship isn't simply an experience, it's this life that we live, and it's this thing that we do where we attribute value to things. And we all have things that we do that with. The question is, who or what are we worshiping? Who or what are you worshiping? Because what we worship matters. Now, if you have your Bibles, you can turn in Isaiah chapter 6. And I'm going to read there in just a moment. But I want to unpack this a little bit. So Isaiah, if you're familiar, Isaiah was a prophet of God. He was God's mouthpiece for the nation of Israel. Now, many of you might be familiar with the passage where Isaiah says, maybe you've recited it, maybe you've prayed it, but there's a passage where Isaiah says, "Here I am, Lord, send me." Anybody familiar with that passage? We've heard that before. So that's something that we hear about, we quote a lot, but we don't always necessarily know what comes after that. And so this passage that we're about to read is the message that God is giving to Isaiah after Isaiah says, "Here I am, Lord, send me." Okay? And so in Isaiah chapter 6, verse 9, this is the message that God gave to Isaiah. He said, "Go and say to this people, keep on hearing, but do not understand. Keep on seeing, but do not perceive. Make the hearts of this people dull and their eyes heavy, or their ears heavy, and blind their eyes, lest they see with their eyes and hear with their ears and understand with their hearts and turn and be healed." Now, you might be wondering, what kind of message is this? Like, Isaiah is all excited. He's like, God, here I am. Lord, just send me. I want to be used by you. God, I want to be your mouthpiece. God, I want to do something significant for you. God, I just want to be used by you. God, whatever it is that you want me to do, God, I'll do it. And then this is the message that God gives him. I think if we were Isaiah and God gives us this message, we're like, God, here I am, send me. And God is like, okay, I need you to go tell him this. We'd be like, oh, actually, wait. God, sorry, I forgot to check my schedule. I got a shift at Culver's in 10 minutes. So you're going to have to find somebody else for this message. I'm good. I don't really want to say this. It doesn't make sense. And it seems harsh. Like, I'm good, right? This is the message that God tells Isaiah to give, right? And we're probably wondering, like, why would God want people's hearts to be dull? Why would God want them to not understand his words? Why is it that God is giving this message to Isaiah? See, prior to this, God had given the Israelites instructions. Now, if you're a parent, you do this all the time. I'm a parent, and we give, Maylee's starting to get to the age now where we can instruct her, we can teach her, we can train her. And if you're a parent, you give your children instructions, right? And if they fail to follow those instructions, there are consequences, right? If you are a good parent and you want to raise your kids to do the right thing and to live the way that you would like them to live and the way that God asks us to live, you give them instructions, and then if they fail to follow the instructions, there are consequences. And so we see that earlier in the Old Testament, God had given the Israelites some instructions. In Exodus 20, this is a part of the Ten Commandments, God gives them some instructions. Starting in verse 4, he says, "You shall not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth." So he's telling them, hey, don't make yourself a statue, an image, don't make yourself any of that. He says, you shall not bow down to them or serve them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and the fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing steadfast love to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. So God gave them some instructions. In Leviticus 19:4, we see more of these instructions that are much similar to the one we just read. And it says, "Do not turn to idols or make for yourselves any gods of cast metal. I am the Lord your God." Right? Now, if we look at these, all of us can look at these and think, man, these are pretty simple instructions, right? Sometimes if you're a parent, maybe you give your kids instructions and they try to say like, well, Mom, you didn't really say that. Or, Mom, I didn't know that's what you meant. Or, Dad, no, you never said that, right? Any of your kids ever said that? Or maybe some of you, when you were kids, you said that to your parents. Maybe you knew very well that they said it, but they didn't say it super clear so you could kind of dance around it a little bit. These are pretty clear. There's not really any room for interpretation here. They can't really say, well, God, I really didn't know what you meant. God, like, don't make an idol, or God's a metal, don't make a carved image. No, I'm not really sure what you mean. There's no room for that in this moment, right? They can't say, Mom, you didn't say that, or Dad, I didn't know what that meant. And to understand this a little bit more, so those are the instructions that God had given them. Now, to create a little bit more context, this message in Isaiah 6, 9 through 10 was given to Isaiah. If you read at the beginning of chapter 6 in Isaiah, it says that this came at the end of King Uzziah's life. Okay? King Uzziah was noted to be a good king. There's two accounts of King Uzziah. We're going to read one in 2 Kings in just a moment. But there's also an account of him in 2 Chronicles 26. The key here, the difference is that in 2 Kings, his name is Amaziah, or Azariah, I'm sorry, that's his father's name. His name is Azariah. And in 2 Chronicles 26, it's Uzziah, but it's the same guy, the same lineage. He came before and after the same people. He just has two different names, okay? So this king that had just died when Isaiah is going to give this message. He's noted to be a good king, but there's one knock on his resume as a king. And in 2 Kings 15, verses 1 through 4, it says this. It says, in the 27th year of Jeroboam, king of Israel, Azariah, this is King Uzziah, the son of Amaziah, king of Judah, began to reign. He was 16 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 52 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jechaliah of Jerusalem. And he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. I don't know if you've ever read in 1st or 2nd Kings or in 1st and 2nd Chronicles, but it's a relief to me when I'm reading this, and it talks about, it says that whatever the king was, it gives an account of their life, and it says that they either did what was right in the eyes of the Lord or they did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. And it's always a relief for me when I'm like, oh, good, there was a good one. Because it seems like you go through and it's like, they did what was evil. They did what was evil, and it was just evil after evil after evil after evil. But King Uzziah says he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, according to all that his father Amaziah had done. But in verse 4, it says, nevertheless. Now, this is unfortunate because this is like a little asterisk by his name. It's like he was good, however, there was one problem. And in verse 4, it says, the high places were not taken away. The people still sacrificed, and they made offerings on the high places. And if you continue reading, because of this, because he did not remove the high places, it actually says that King Uzziah was made into a leper. He got leprosy because of this. Now, you might be wondering, what is a high place? And in the Old Testament, high places were places of worship, and they were man-made, and they were often either on man-made platforms or they were on hilltops. And there, what they did was that they would build things, they would construct images, statues, and these high places were not places where people would go to worship God, to worship Yahweh. These high places were places that people would go to worship pagan gods, false gods, right? And the reason, this is funny, because when I was reading about this, I read about how they build these high places on literally high places because they believe that if they put it on a hill or if they put it on a platform, that they would be able to be closer to God or closer to their gods, right? And I was like, yeah, I guess if that was true, maybe we'd build our church like 5,000 feet in the air and we would be as close as we possibly could get. But it doesn't work that way. So at every single one of these high places, though, something was constructed to worship. They built something. They constructed something to worship. Now, again, remember the instructions that God had given. He gave clear instructions. In King Uzziah, he did fairly well, but he failed to remove the high places, which means that people were still worshiping these things, these objects that they had created, which was going against the very instructions that God had given to them in the first place. See, here they are, they're still worshiping inanimate objects that they had made themselves, and they're failing to be obedient to the instructions. And we all know that if you're a parent and you give your kids instruction, if they fail to follow the instructions, there are consequences, right? And sometimes those consequences aren't necessarily always like, hey, you do this and you go to your room for timeout, or hey, you do this and you can't play video games for the rest of the summer, or whatever it is. Sometimes those consequences are like real life consequences. Like, hey, if you don't do your homework, you're going to fail this class, right? Like, it's give and take. And so in this moment, though, we're seeing the consequences, the effects, the impact of their failure to follow God's instructions. And God is sending Isaiah with this message where he says, keep on hearing, but do not understand. Keep on seeing, but do not perceive. Make the heart of this people dull, their ears heavy, blind their eyes, lest they see with their eyes and hear with their ears and understand with their hearts and turn and be healed. And God is sending this message to the Israelites because the Israelites have made a decision that God, Yahweh, is not who they wanted to worship. And because they've made the decision to worship these idols, these false gods, these inanimate objects who often were carved to look like people or to look like animals with faces and eyes and ears and mouths and nose, God was sending them a message to let them know that they will become like the very idols that they worship. They will become like the lifeless, spiritless, powerless, inanimate objects that they were choosing to worship and to ascribe their worth and their value to. So God in this moment is saying, oh, you don't want to follow me. You want to worship your cute little art project. You don't think that I see that. You don't think that I know that. You don't think that I'm aware of this. He said, okay, well, because of that, you will become like this very thing that you have decided to worship. You will become like this very thing that you have decided in your heart and in your mind that is most valuable to you. You will become spiritually blind and deaf and lifeless like these inanimate objects that you are worshiping. And in Psalm 115, verses 4 through 8, it says this. It says that their idols are silver and gold, the work of human hands. They have mouths, but do not speak. They have eyes, but do not see. They have ears, but do not hear. Noses, but do not smell. They have hands, but do not feel. Feet, but do not walk. And they do not make a sound in their throat. In verse 8, this tells us everything right here. It says, those who make them become like them, so do all who trust in them. What God is saying, what this passage is telling us, and what we see is happening in this place is that we become like what we worship. We become like the things that we hold valuable, the things that we ascribe worth and valuable. We see, if we think back to Lightning McQueen, Lightning McQueen became more like Radiator Springs. In that moment, he was able to put the brakes on and stop in the middle of the race as he was about to cross the finish line to win the Piston Cup because of the time that he had spent there and because that he saw these people that he had spent time with as valuable. They had began to rub off on him and on his life. Now, I know a lot of you might be thinking, well, okay, like this is weird. I don't worship statues. I don't worship inanimate objects. I don't have something set up in my house. If you've ever been to Shields, there's some statues outside of Shields, some former presidents, and we don't walk up to those statues and bow down and pay homage to those statues. And if we did, if we walked out of Shields and we saw somebody doing that, if you had your kids with you, you'd be like, hey, kids, like, get a video of this guy. Like, what is he doing? He's bowing down to this statue of a president, right? Like, that's weird. So we don't do that, right? We don't do this. And you might be thinking, okay, well, I don't do this. I don't do what the Israelites did. And I told you we would get to this table, right? And so while we might not worship, we might not have inanimate objects that we hold at a high value in our life, there are things that we do place a significant amount of value. There are things in our life that sometimes, if we're not careful, we can begin to value them more than we value God, right? And so some of these things, maybe for some of us, one of the things that we value more or that we maybe begin to worship is our things or our possessions, right? Some of us, we really like our stuff, right? And so we begin to place a high value on the things that we own, the things that we possess, or maybe for others of us, maybe it is our career. We love what we do. We put so much time and effort and energy into what we do, and we begin to value what we do more than the one who created us to do what we do. Maybe for others of us, It's our reputation. We value how people see us. We value what people think about us. We really care about how people see us. We care about it so much that we think about it more than we would about God. Maybe for some of us, the thing we value the most is entertainment, right? Or media or whatever it is. We want to be entertained. We care about being entertained more than we do about worshiping God. Maybe for others of us, it's control. We like to be in control, and we value control. We want to do whatever we can to be in control at all times. For others of us, maybe it's ourself. We really, really, really love ourselves. And if we're honest, we think more about ourselves and what we can do to please ourselves than we do about what we can do to honor and to please God. For others of us, and as I'm going through this, I trust that God is speaking to some of you, and I would encourage you to be aware of that, to be aware of maybe the area or the thing that God might be pricking your heart with, and to not miss this moment, because in a little bit we're going to have an opportunity to respond. But maybe for others of us, it's our influence. We value our influence. We want to be influential. We want to be powerful. We want people to respect us. We want to be able to be somebody who makes a difference, and we start to worship that more than God. Maybe for others of us, maybe the thing that we value the most is sex. Maybe the thing that we place a high value on is sex, and it's something that we feel like we can't get enough of. We feel like we just keep chasing and chasing and chasing instead of trusting and following God and being obedient to His design and His plan. Maybe for others of us, and this one maybe stings, but maybe for some of us, the thing that we value the most is money. Maybe the thing that we care about, the thing that we think about most often is money. How do I make more? How do I keep all the money that I have? How do I generate more? How do I do all this? How do I make more money? How do I have more money? Maybe that's the thing that you think about the most or has a lot of value. For some of you, maybe it's your relationships, and you might be thinking, well, we need relationships, right? And we absolutely do. But for some of us, we place more value on our relationships with other people. We put so much effort, or we put so much stock into a relationship with other people, and we put more there than we do in our relationship with God. So some of us, maybe we value relationships more. For others of us, maybe it's sports. Maybe we know more about our favorite sports team. We know more stats about our favorite sports team than we know about the Bible. Maybe we could recite our favorite sporting team's record over the last 5 years, but we couldn't quote 2 verses of Scripture, right? So maybe for some of us, the thing that we value the most, the thing that we give our time to the most is sports. Or maybe for others of us, it's comfort, right? We love to be comfortable. We love to have things the way that we want them to be. We love to not have things be too hard. And maybe for some of us, it is our dreams. And you might be thinking, well, what's wrong with having dreams? What's wrong with having plans? And the reality is that all of these things in and of themselves are not necessarily bad things, right? All of these things in and of themselves can be good things. The problem comes when we start to value or place these things over our relationship with God. And again, some of you, maybe God is pricking your heart about one of these. Maybe God is highlighting something and He's saying, hey, no, like you're starting to value that more than me. You're starting to give more time to that than me. You're starting to think about that more than me. You're starting to put more time and effort and energy into that more than me, right? And what happens as we do this, what happens as we put our effort into some of these things, what happens as we start to value these things more than God is not that all of a sudden I start to turn into a dollar bill or I turn into my favorite sports team's mascot. what happens when we do this is that I begin to become numb to God. I begin to become numb to his voice, to his word, and to his truth. Why? Because I'm valuing something that lacks the Spirit of God. I'm valuing something that lacks God's power, his presence, and his Spirit, just like those objects that the Israelites were worshiping that they made with their hands. See, at times we might wonder why God feels distant. Maybe you've wondered that. Maybe you felt like God is distant in your own life. And as I say this, I know that there are times in our lives where God will send us into the wilderness, so to speak, a place where we're unable to sense God and hear his voice. And God sends us there. He puts us in that place to refine us, to grow us, to stretch us, to strengthen us, to do all these things. So when I say this, I'm not talking about being in a season or a time in your life where you're in the wilderness. But for some of us, God feels distant, and it's not because we're in the wilderness. For some of us, God feels distant because of the things that we are valuing in our life. Some of us, God feels distant because we are misplacing our worship, and we have begun to value maybe one of these things more than we value our relationship with Jesus, right? We begin to make more time for these things than we do for God. Maybe at one point we got up in the morning and we spent time with God. We prayed, we talked with him, we came to church, we worshiped, we did all those things. But now maybe we're starting to do less, and there's other things that are filling our time, so we're not doing it quite as much. And we wonder why God feels distant. But what if it's because we're misplacing our worship? We're getting the order of the things that we value wrong. See, if that's how you're feeling, if that's where you're at, it doesn't have to be that way. It does not have to be this way. And this is why, when we think about worship on Sunday mornings, this is why we worship on a Sunday morning. Because it's an opportunity for us to ascribe worth and value to God and to become more like him in the process, right? This is why when we sing, some of you, maybe you come from different church backgrounds, maybe you have a different church experience, and so you've grown up, you go into church and you read out of the book and you just kind of recite a song and you just go through the motions, and you come here and it's like, wow, this is way different. People are raising their hands and they're singing like they mean it. And yes, we do sing like we mean it because we worship because we want to become more like God. And maybe some of you are like, why do they raise their hands? That's weird. They're just doing it for attention. They like that. Some of you, maybe if you went through the Holy Roar Bible study, one of the things that they talked about was this Hebrew word yada. Now, the root word of that word is yad, Y-A-D, and that word means hand in Hebrew. And in the Psalms, in the Old Testament, there's this word yada that is sprinkled throughout the Psalms and throughout the Old Testament, and it is used for worship, right? That word is translated to the English language as a word for worship. And this word yada means to worship by praising or by raising or lifting or waving your hands. So when we come to church and you see people raising their hands, we're not doing it because we want to be weird or crazy or make you uncomfortable. We're doing it because it's a way that God has asked us to worship, right? And so we need to understand this, that when we do this, when we worship on Sunday mornings, when we sing, we're not just doing it. It's not just something for those that are energetic. It's not just something for those who are really bubbly personalities. It's not just something for those who are musical. It's something for all of us, because when we choose to engage in worship, it allows us to become more like God. See, when we worship, we don't worship to change God. When we worship, God changes us. And some of us, we need to understand that. Like when I worship, when I praise God, when I sing to him, when I lift my hands and I give him everything that I have, I'm not changing God and his heart and his character one bit. But what is happening when I do this is my heart, my character, my attitude, my thoughts are changing. And this is why we stand there with our hands raised. This is why we worship God with everything that we have. This isn't worship. This isn't worship. This This isn't worship. Standing in front with the seat in front of you and just leaning over, checking your watch, like hoping that this song time is over soon, it's not worship. If we're serious about wanting to become more like God, then we need to be serious about worshiping God and giving Him the honor and the glory and the praise that He deserves. And this is my challenge to each of you, that we would be a church that goes all in on worship. We don't have to be weird. We don't have to be crazy, but that we would choose to go all in and worship God because it makes us more like Him and because God deserves to be praised. In Psalm 145, verses 1 through 3, it says this. This speaks of God being worthy of our praise. It says, I will exalt you, my God, the King. I will praise your name forever and ever. Every day I will praise you and extol your name forever and ever. Great is the Lord and most worthy of praise. His greatness no one can fathom. God is worthy of our praise. We don't worship God because He needs it. We don't worship God because He's a desperate boyfriend that longs for our attention and is going to fall apart and is fragile if we don't give it to Him. No, we worship God to be more like Him and because He deserves to be worshiped and praised. Now, you might be wondering, okay, does this mean that I can't watch, I can't read, I can't spend time with, I can't do anything other than spend time with or give my time to Jesus? And the answer simply to this is of course not, right? The key in all of this is that we just simply need to be aware of what we are valuing, of what we are holding in high regard in our life, right? And we have to remember that, hey, if I want to become more like Jesus, if I want to become more like Him, then I must be aware and I need to worship Him. I need to hold Him in high regard. I need to value Him with my life, and I need to treat Him as valuable because He is, right? And so you might be wondering, how do I know if my worship is out of order? How do I know if the things that I value are out of order? What is the litmus test? See, the litmus test for this is simply, what am I unwilling to let go of? Ask yourself, what am I unwilling to let go of? Because the things that you feel that you cannot let go of and surrender to God reveal what you value the most. So as I went through this list, if there's something up there that you're like, I can't let go of that. My career, God, that's everything to me. My money, no, God, I can't do that. My sports team, God, you know I love my sports team. My relationships, God, you know that I care about my people. The thing that you are unwilling to lay down and say, God, I give this to you, is the thing that you value the most. And God's not saying, hey, you can't ever have anything to do with that. God is just saying, hey, would you hold on to that loosely? Would you recognize and remember the one that gave it to you in the first place? Would you realize that you're not the source of all the things that you have? You're not the creator, you're not the author and the finisher like I am. So would you just hold on to this loosely? Would you trust me? Would you allow me to be the most valuable thing in your life? Because as we do that, I will take care of you. See, Martin Luther, he's quoted in saying, whatever your heart clings to and confides in, that is really your God, your functional Savior. So what is it? What is that thing that we're holding on to so tightly that we're not willing to say, God, I trust you with this? What is it in our lives? See, in order to keep this from happening, we need to intentionally remind ourselves that, God, all that I have is yours. God, I give this to you. God, I'm not going to hold tightly to this. God, I'm not going to hoard this. God, I'm not going to trust this. I'm not going to value this. God, I'm going to trust and I'm going to value you. I'm going to lay this down to you and I'm going to allow you to work and move through this. If it's your career, if it's your money, God, I give this to you. God, I want to be a steward, a vessel for what you have given to me. And God, I trust you. God, my trust is not in this thing. My trust is in you that has given this to me, right? Intentionally laying those things down and saying, God, I trust you. G.K. Beale wrote in his book, We Become Like What We Worship, he says, what we revere, we resemble. So the things that we value, we look like, either for ruin or for restoration. To commit ourselves to some part of the creation more than the Creator is idolatry. And when we worship something in creation, we become like it, as spiritually lifeless and insensitive to God as a piece of wood, rock, or stone. We become spiritually blind, deaf, and dumb, even though we have physical eyes and ears. If we commit ourselves to something that does not have God's Spirit, to that degree, we will be lacking the Spirit, and we will be like ancient Israel. We will be like the ones who made those carved images, who said, I'm going to worship these, I'm going to go to the high places. And now God is sending them this message that, hey, cool, you can do that, you can worship them, but you're going to look like them. You're not going to hear my voice. You're not going to sense the leading and the guiding of my Spirit. You're not going to see my hand at work in your life. Why? Because you're going to become like the inanimate objects that are most valuable to you. See, the whole idea of this message is that you are what you worship. You are what you value. You are what you hold dear in your life. And so if you want to become more like Jesus, worship Him. Hold Him in the highest regard in your life. Spend time with Him. Read His Word. Pray. Talk to Him. Sing. Worship Him with everything that you have. Do everything that you do for Him. Do everything that you do for Him. And I want to invite you in this moment, I want to invite you to stand with me. And I want to encourage you in two ways, right? Again, the question is, we all worship someone or something. We all hold things valuable in our lives. The question is, what are those things? Is it God or is it something else? And if it's something else, that needs to change. And so this morning, what I want you to do is, maybe there's one of these things that God has kind of pricked your heart about, and He's trying to get your attention about. This morning, as we sing this song, I want to encourage you and invite you to pray, to say, God, I'm sorry. God, I give this thing to you. God, would you help me to repeatedly give this thing to you? God, would you help me to trust you with this? God, would you help me to value you more than I value this thing? If that's you, whatever it is, this morning I need you to do that. Don't walk out of this room without doing that. Don't miss this moment to do this. For others of you, or maybe after you've done that, I want to invite you and encourage you to sing with the worship team, to worship with all that you have, to give it everything that you got, to worship like you want to become like the one you are worshiping, to not stand there like this, to not stand there with your hands in your pocket or look like you're late for your lunch date, to worship like you want to become like the one you're worshiping. So whatever it is that you need to do, whether you need to have a conversation with God, or when you're done with that, maybe you need to just, maybe it's uncomfortable. That's all right. Maybe you just need to give God everything you got and to make a stand this morning and say, God, I don't care. I'm going to worship you even if it's uncomfortable. I'm going to do it. I'm going to worship you because you deserve to be praised, because I want to be more like you. So I want to pray. The worship team's going to lead us in this song. Jesus, we thank you. God, I thank you so much for your word. God, I thank you for your goodness, for your grace, for your mercy in our lives. God, I thank you for your Spirit, Lord, that is speaking to us even right now in this moment, highlighting things and areas in our lives, God, where maybe we have placed above you, things that we have started to value more than you. God, I pray that in this moment that you would help us to lay those things down to you and say, God, I give this to you. God, I trust this with you. That we would be people that say, God, I trust you more than the things that you've given to me. God, I trust you more than the things that maybe I feel like I've worked hard for. God, I trust you and I want to be more like you. And God, I pray that as people do this, that they would recognize, that they would sense your love, your grace, and your mercy, God, that you're not mad at them. You're not angry with them. You're not upset with them. God, you're just standing there with your arms open and you're saying, would you just come back? Would you love me with all that you have? Would you trust me more than anything else? Would you follow me? Would you serve me? Would you be obedient to me? God, I pray that we would sense that in this moment. And God, I pray that we would be a church, that we would be a people, God, that worships you with everything that we have, that we would recognize that as we do this, God, that we are becoming more like you. And God, that we would recognize that we don't just worship you for us. God, we worship you because you deserve to be praised. So God, I just pray in this moment, God, I pray in this moment that you would continue to speak to people, continue to highlight things in their hearts and in their minds and in their spirits. God, things that you want to change. Help them to sense that, help them to know it and to make that change. And God, I pray in this moment that we would just say, God, I'm all in. God, I'm going to worship you with everything that I have, with everything that I got. I don't care if people think that I'm weird. I don't care if it's uncomfortable. God, I'm going to worship you with everything that I have because you deserve to be praised and I want to be more like you. So Jesus, we thank you. We pray this all in your name. Amen.